Enix has blown their load in regards to the upcoming Dragon Quest III HD-2D, and I'm all here for it. And especially when you have influencers, the media, journalists all getting hands-on with this release, it definitely does feel like Square Enix is giving Dragon Quest the red carpet. And for today, I want to talk about a majority of the information that we've gotten so far, whether it's collector's editions, the game in general, some things that the developers have said, and some of the things that have been mentioned in the hands-on previews. But of course, before we dive right in, I want to quickly say thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for subscribing to this channel. If you probably haven't noticed, the channel has finally reached 1,000 subscribers, and it's definitely been quite a journey from back in 2011 all the way up until now, to where we finally reached this huge milestone number. I know a majority of people haven't known me since 2011, or even the stuff I've done from 2014 till 2017, and it's definitely been a journey from back then till now. Even though I've gone on and off with this journey, we finally reached to the point where we're at 1,000 subscribers, and here's to more. And of course, I do plan to have a 1,000 subscribers special video, but do allow me the time to work on that. But anyways, thank you guys so much for subscribing. And now, let's dive right in. So let's talk about Dragon Quest III HD-2D, starting with how this game looks in comparison to what we saw back in 2021, because it is definitely much different from what we had previously. And there seems to be a reason to that. On the Octopath Twitter account, the Japanese one, to which I have to say thank you to Genki for translating this tweet, they do mention they probably announced this game too early, as typically HD-2D dev cycles last around 3 to 4 years, and I'm guessing around this time when they announced Dragon Quest III HD-2D, they were very early in the release. And it definitely does make a lot of sense now seeing the game in comparison to what we saw previously. I would assume what we saw back in 2021 was more so a vertical slice of the game, or a prototype, but now understanding that perspective, it does make sense to why we had to wait so long for more information to come out. I sort of wish they would have handled information on this game more differently, at least give us information every year, but it is what it is, and the game looks stunning nonetheless. And stunning indeed it looks. I mean, the best comparison I can take is Alien Castle when our hero's walking over there, his mother's watching behind him. Looking back at what we have now compared to what we had back in 2021, you can tell there's a clear difference. You can tell they put a lot of work in this release. And I mean in general, when you're exploring the overworld rather than the over-top view that we had back in 2021, we now have a pseudo third-person view, making the world feel even more vast. And I can definitely tell the ideas they had back in 2021 have been fully fleshed out based on the build we see now. Exploring the underground now has this sewage passage. You can tell locales like Portugal look vastly different than how they looked previously. And how this location right here, which I assume is the optional island you can go to, they've now fully emphasized the bridges that connect each island. They have done a lot of work to fully flesh out this game and have it a bit of its own different identity in a way. The best way I can compare this is Final Fantasy VII Remake. We know that they're taking a lot of liberties with Final Fantasy VII. I don't have too much of a problem with Final Fantasy and how they handle things, but when you look at how Dragon Quest handles making these changes from Dragon Quest III on the NES, Super Famicom, Game Boy, iOS, over to this HD-2D remake, they're taking the concept of these stages, these locales, and saying how can we flesh them out, how can we make them feel more fully realized in our remake. And I do feel they take that in strides, that idea of fleshing these locales out, while feeling familiar at the same time. And you basically get a game that feels different from the original release, but maintains the core ideals of what made that game that game. Because we still have the party system, creating your own parties. We still have the turn-based combat, and we still have that sense of exploration that was emphasized in the original NES release. And hell, based on what we see in the trailer, we see a locale that looks eerily similar to the Ice Cave, meaning we're getting content that's been exclusive for many years on the Game Boy Color. And plus, it seems like we're getting a brand new class added in to Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake, and many people are speculating it could be the Monster Masher class. And essentially, with the Monster Masher class, you can get those monster tokens much more easier to get easier access to the Ice Cave. And this is how I view a interesting remake that still keeps to the ideals, the core, the essentials of what made the original game so great. And definitely Team Asano is trying to reach that record of having the most unique remake out there, because typically when we have Dragon Quest remakes, the most we'll get is quality of life changes, maybe some post-game content here and there, some redesigned dungeons, maybe some few additional content, but for the most part it tries to keep 100% to the core of the original game, and I do applaud them for what they're trying to do. And talking about graphics, this game looks quite different from what we normally see from HD-2D releases. The sprite work in 3 HD-2D looks much more detailed in comparison to something like Octopath Traveler, Live Alive, Octopath Traveler 2, Triangle Strategy. You can definitely tell they spent a lot of time and effort of looking at the artwork from Toriyama and any other references to create sprites that are highly detailed. And other things like color use, bloom use, textures definitely do feel different in comparison to what we've seen previously from Team Asano. Because typically with HD-2D releases, you have some of those people out there that say, oh, the colors are too drab, there's way too much use of bloom, and that kind of deteriorates my experience with these HD-2D games. But looking at 3 HD-2D Remake, and knowing what the Dragon Quest franchise is known for, which is very colorful worlds, very lavish locales, you can tell they took that to heart, and they have a game that, in comparison to their previous HD-2D titles, looks way more colorful, does use a little less of bloom, and you have these really detailed sprites that Team Asano spent their time on examining that Toriyama artwork. And speaking of artwork, we have the cover art for this game, and it definitely looks very different from typical Dragon Quest box arts, because we're not using the Toriyama art style, but instead the typical art style we see for HD-2D games. And I have a few theories behind this. Let's start with the more simpler reason. I'm guessing because this is an HD-2D title, they want to make sure Dragon Quest III HD-2D matches with the art style that's known with HD-2D titles from Live Alive, Octopath, and Triangle Strategy. But there's another reason I have in my head to why they chose to not use the Toriyama art style, to which all hangs on Akira Toriyama himself. As we know already, Toriyama passed away pretty early in this year, and around that time an article came out talking about Dragon Quest XII and how the development was going with that game. And I made a video talking about this, and let me spend some time to quickly correct myself. This article actually came in March, but the reason I said it came out on that day I recorded was simply because I saw the Reddit post and they said it came out today, and I thought, okay, I could trust them. Obviously that is indeed a case of me needing to fact check a bit more on the sources themselves, so I do apologize for giving some wrong information on that video. But anyways, onto my theory. In the article they mentioned how Toriyama seems to be relatively behind on his work, as he's done some sketches for the main hero, some of the monster designs, and the main villain, but he hasn't really done a lot with Dragon Quest XII. And I personally think that bled into Dragon Quest III HD-2D. And the reason I say that is because we didn't get the box art for Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince until October or November, I have to say. And that was done by Toriyama himself. So I'm assuming Toriyama thought he was going to live on in 2024, and then by the time September came around or October, he would get to work on the box art for Dragon Quest III HD-2D. But of course, as we now know, he unfortunately passed away in between February and March. And when that happened, Square Enix had two choices. Get one of their usual Toriyama imitators to do the artwork, or do something different. Have the HD-2D artist do the art for Dragon Quest III HD-2D, while at the same time giving homage to what Toriyama's art is known for. And the DQ Twitter account does mention they want to make homage to Toriyama and his typical art style. Hey guys, Roy from the future here, and another thought came into my head in regards to potentially why they chose to not use the Toriyama art style. And as I mentioned in the video, Toriyama, before he passed away, was relatively swamped with work, whether it was Dragon Quest XII, Dragon Ball Daima, or hell, just Dragon Ball in general, and even at the time the upcoming Sandland series and game. So maybe Square Enix felt, oh, we don't want to put too much burden on Toriyama, let's give the Octopath guy a try, while Toriyama gets some time to work on the monster designs, the character designs for Dragon Quest XII. But that's just a thought. But moving on, the game is coming out November 14th. It does seem like Square Enix is copying Nintendo in that regard, where now they're releasing games on Thursday. We'll see how this turns out for Dragon Quest, but at least with charting, the game is charting pretty high on Amazon. I took this screenshot when pre-orders opened up, and Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake, the Switch version at the very least, is charting at number 6, while the PlayStation 5 version is at number 14, and the Xbox version is nowhere to be seen unless you click on Xbox, and you see a chart around 25. So yeah, this game is definitely doing well, and it's kinda crazy to think, maybe you need to make games that people want, like re-releasing the older games because people don't have experience with the older games, don't you think? Just a thought right there. And the game's going for $60, which pretty typical for Square Enix releases. If it did go for $70, I might have been in the bullet because this is Dragon Quest we're talking about here, but I don't want to fully discuss that just yet. But other than that, there's also a collector's edition going for $200, and all it has from what I can tell is some digital wallpapers, acrylic standees for all the party members, and a nice looking box. And all I have to say on that is the collector's edition for Dragon Quest XI had much more content in comparison to this collector's edition. And that's kind of a shame because I probably would have spent the money on this, but looking at it being $200 and all I get is acrylics, yeah, that's not much. But anyways, I have this game pre-ordered on Steam via Green Man Gaming because they're selling the game about 18% off. And I also bought a Switch copy via PlayAsia because the Japanese yen is relatively weak. And I bought the game for $45, and where I live, shipping is around $7. But anyways, let's move on to what influencers had to say about Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake, particularly Rogerspace. As Nightflight Studios, the same guy who worked on that amazing fan-made Dragon Quest I Remake, compiled all the information Rogerspace had to say, to which he says, there is voice acting in both English and Japanese, to which I'm going to be in Japanese, just saying. There is a performance 60 FPS mode, a 30 FPS graphical mode for the PlayStation 5 version, I would assume the same for the Xbox, and 30 FPS on Nintendo Switch. And he also did mention a 100% new orchestrated OST, but there's a little bit of confliction behind that. And Nightflight did address this, but I would hopefully assume that night themes that have been normally not been orchestrated, get orchestrated for the first time, because I would like to hear those renditions be orchestrated for once, or just have a different rendition than the typical MIDIs we get. Because it's been over a decade since we've had these current MIDIs we've heard for Dragon Quest, and I seriously think we do need an upgrade for those MIDIs. It's been over 10 years, technology has improved, and hopefully Sugiyama Kobo offers us brand new MIDIs sometime down the line. And there's some other things I've noticed from influencers in regards to Dragon Quest III HD-2D. One of the influencers showed a picture of both the female and male Erdrick, and it's in the Toriyama style. So I wonder, are we at least going to get some art here and there that's in that Toriyama style? Hard to say at this point, but I'm just overall curious to that. And finally, the last thing I want to mention, which I intentionally saved this for last, is of course we're also getting Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD-2D Remake. In a similar fashion to how they handled Dragon Quest 1 and 2 on the Super Famicom and the Game Boy Color, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 will be in the same package. And at this moment in time, we do not have gameplay for Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD-2D Remake, we just have the art that's done by the Octopath Traveler guy. And I'm too lazy right now to look up his name. And I do want to save some of my thoughts on Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD-2D Remake for a future video discussing what I would like to see in this upcoming release. But all I have to say is, all the way back in 2021, Yuji Horii did mention the idea of remaking Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and I believe someone that was there actually blew a whistle saying, hey, you can't say that, Yuji Horii. And I completely forgot about this. And I remember people were trying to remind me, hey, Yuji Horii didn't mention this. And of course there was the whole thing was Mystic, which, whatever, he's gone, he's yeeted off the internet, we don't need to worry about him. But it's kind of crazy how those years back, Yuji Horii did tease we're getting Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD-2D Remake. And here we are right now, where we're getting Dragon Quest 3 first, and then Dragon Quest 1 and 2. A different experience where we experience the prologue first, and then experience Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. That's the best way I can put it. But nonetheless, it is indeed a great time to be a Dragon Quest fan. We're finally getting Dragon Quest 3 HD-2D Remake, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD-2D Remake, and all I hope is Dragon Quest 4, Dragon Quest 5, Dragon Quest 6, all get the HD-2D Remake. I don't want Dragon Quest 7, 8, or 9 to get the HD-2D treatment because I want them to be full-on 3D remakes. Because those games definitely deserve to be full-on 3D, while Dragon Quest 4, 5, and 6 more so deserve to be HD-2D. This is definitely a new age of Dragon Quest, introducing brand new people into the series, and experiencing why so many people have enjoyed this series, and I'm excited for brand new people to experience Dragon Quest for the first time. But anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and don't forget to leave this video a like and subscribe as well. And you want to see more videos, do check out these videos right here. I personally think you'll enjoy them. See you guys on the next one. Take care.